Harvey H. Dooge, machinery repairman, first class. Was sort of a different sight. I didn't know too much about ships. I knew the size of some of them, you know, but when they had, when it was assigned to the Abnaki, they said it was a tug, but there wasn't any pictures, you know, and so I didn't really realize, you know, the size of it. I guess I was a little surprised that it wasn't so big, you know, when we went aboard and when we got there the first time and went up the gangplank and onto the fantail and was apprehensive and a little excited. While I was on the Abnaki, right after we went aboard, the Abnaki was supposed to go into dry dock. And so I and this other, one of the fellows I went aboard with, Richard Gruen, he was from Waupun, which is 20 miles north of me. He was also married, so we decided to bring our wives to Honolulu. And so we did, and of course we didn't have, we were just fireman apprentice, so we had to put our own bill. And so we did, we brought them in, they came in one of the first weeks of July. And 2 weeks later, they came in on a Saturday. 2 weeks later in July, the ship, the Abnaki, was assigned to 3 months duty in Guam. So they sat there, you know, for 3 months without us. And then when we came back from Guam, we towed around some things for a week or so. Then we went into dry dock and had to overhaul. And after that, after trials, shakedown was over, then we were assigned to Alaska, so to the Aleutians. And so then I sent my wife back to Wisconsin, and she traveled back with another fellow's wife, Russell Snyder, who was on board, and his wife was in Honolulu also, and she was also pregnant, the same as my wife. Well, we took one of the first trips we took was to Wake Island. No, not Wake, Midway. We took a barge with I think it was telephone poles or so. We took to Midway Island, and we made that trip, and we came back. And then we had, we was out, many days we were out. We towed targets for airplane practice and for other ships, you know, targets. And then we went to Guam, and Guam we was there for air and sea rescue, and we was in the harbor most of the time. We didn't do much towing there, but when we left Guam, we took I think it was an ARD. We took that and we towed that to Subic Bay of the Philippines. And then from there is when we went back from Subic Bay, the Philippines, and we went back to Pearl Harbor, and then we went into dry dock. And of course, in that, when we was always around Pearl, there was little different tows. We went over, I can remember one time we went over around the island to like where the Air Force was around, and we picked up a crane that was on a barge, and we delivered that back into Pearl. And then when we were in the Aleutians, we stood by different times over by the island of Shimia when they were getting aviation gas when the tankers was unloading gas, and we stood by. And when we left the Aleutians, and we were just before we came back to going back to Pearl Harbor, we went to Kodiak and we picked up a barge and we were going down to the mainland down by Yakutat, and we were supposed, there was some medical barge or so that had run aground and we were supposed to tow that off. But then we got down to Yakutat, and then there was another tug can, and then they relieved us, and so we never did, you know, tow that off. And then we went back, I think we went back to Adak, I'm not sure, and we picked up a barge. And we had to take that from the Aleutian Islands back to Pearl Harbor when we went back to home port. On the way back, we were cruising right along, pounding pretty good to get home. And it was pretty rough weather, it was pretty stormy, and that barge was old. And so the barge started to sink. And what had happened is the barge, it's slanted down in the front, you know, so that it cuts through the water, but hitting the waves, it had sort of opened it up like I can't put a V in it right, you know, back. And so the front compartments in that barge was flooding, so it sat there at an angle, probably a, I don't know, 20-degree angle or so, and it was getting hard to tow. And so then we had to stop. As I understand, they wanted to sink it, but they wouldn't let us, I guess. So then we had to get it up as close as we could alongside, and then we put a portable pump over there to pump out what compartments we could to keep it floating. And that, and so that portable pump, and then we had to service it part of the time too, so somebody always had to go over. And then they slowed us way down. As I understood, they slowed us down to like 1 or 2 knots, and we were usually towed at, I think, 5 or 6 or up to 7 knots, something like that or so. And as I understand, they slowed us down to 1 or 2 knots, which took us forever to get back to Pearl Harbor, and we'd been gone. That was like in November, I think it was, or so, and we'd been gone since February, you know, and that's where we were. But anyway, it kept afloat until we got back into Pearl Harbor, and then they, I don't know what they did with that, it was just scrap, you know. And also when we, on the other tow, when we took that ARD into Subic Bay, they usually come out with smaller tugs and help her take some of that, you know. Well, I don't know if they didn't have any, or if the captain didn't want to wait. Anyway, we went in, and they shortened up the tow line, and that ARD came in behind us, and we went in, and that ARD came in, and it wasn't moving so much, but the things are heavy. You know, that ARD, the nose of it sort of hit that, and it was a wood pier, you know, and you could just see it push that pier, and I don't know who got in trouble for that or what happened. But anyway, well, we got in, we got it anchored, and so, and then we was there just a day or so, and then we left, you know. And one of the other trips we took, when I first went aboard, is we came back. I don't know if it's before, I think it must have been after we had been to Midway. We came back to the United States, came from Pearl Harbor, and we came down back to Long Beach. And there was, they had donated or some 4 PCs to, I don't know if it was South Korea, who was getting it. But anyway, we escorted them back because we carried quite a bit of fuel oil on that tug. I think it was like 110,000 gallons or something like that. And we escorted them PCs back to Pearl Harbor from Long Beach, California. And we refueled them on the way because they didn't have enough fuel in them small. They were much smaller. And they didn't carry enough fuel to make the whole trip. I don't think, maybe they did, but they would have ran low, you know. So we refueled them. We took that trip, and so we refueled them on the way from Long Beach to Pearl Harbor. And that was another trip that we took.